Hi and welcome back. In this portion of the training I want to go over the 2x6 wood structure. The 2x6 wood structure, the best possible way to fix your bracket in a 2x6 structure would be to come and lay over your strut over top of the 2x6s. This, for the longevity of the installation, this is definitely the best route to go. So if you got access to the attic, get up in there. You want to lay your strut down over top, and then we're going to pin down the strut with some wood screws. So it's important to have a ceiling plate handy, and that's why I have installed the second nut on the threaded rod. So we're going to place the ceiling plate. We're going to go down through the ceiling plate. So let's pin down the strut first. And now we're ready to take our 9/16 key and tighten up both of those nuts. This one here, it's extremely important that you tighten it as hard as you can. Once that rod and that nut is tightened up against the saddle nut, no problems, no issues with future of that threaded rod possibly loosening or moving as we're tightening up from below. So at BHM, we prefer to work down through your ceiling structure and have your threaded rod stick out underneath the ceiling. And now we're ready to go below the ceiling and level off all of our threaded rods and install the quick track bracket. What we want to do here is we want to lay over a piece of strut channel. You're looking at anywhere to cutting it from 55 inches to 60 inches in length. You need to pin down the strut, okay, where it's going to be falling in your layout at the 3 locations, just in case somebody was to come by at a later date and possibly move or shift that strut. Of course, we're going to do our sandwich effect. Okay, so when we do our sandwich effect, again, the ceiling plate on the upper inside of the drywall and another one coming from below. And it happens that my drop falls in between 2 of my strut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trapeze. I'm going to install my ceiling plate over the hole, and I'm going to come and trapeze my strut across, crisscrossing perpendicular to the ones running perpendicular to the trusses. Now we're going to take a look at the 2x4 trusses. The 2x4 truss method with the cathedral type articulating brackets. This type of installation is going to save us in regards to some strut. As we know, when we use the crossover 3 truss installation method, we have to cross over 3 trusses, therefore having to stay within 8 inches of the nodes and all that, possibly adding vertical uprights. So when that situation is starting to be very costly, and maybe we can be in more in the center area of the trusses where we got enough headroom to get in there and actually fix this bracket to the trusses, this would be your option and your route to go. So the cathedral type bracket is going to come and fasten to each side, each truss. And again, we're just spanning 2 trusses. So we're going to fasten to each truss. We need to screw them down with number 10 or number 8 wood screws, okay? And then off of this articulating arm area, okay, we're going to come off of it with the saddle nut, and our installation is going to continue down through your ceiling, again performing your sandwich effect. So you need to get your ceiling plate down there into that area. Now you're going to take your other strut. We have 2 pieces of strut in this scenario. So you're going to take your other piece of strut, okay, and target in line with your upper strut. Of course, you would pull out your tape measure, make sure that we're square as much as possible with the upper strut. Now, we're going to come down through the second strut and hang off of the upper strut. So in doing so, and applying to the pressure to the upper side of the 2x4s, That's how we are actually sharing the load upon the two trusses. That's the whole concept of the cathedral type 2x4 kit. Now we're ready to go ahead and fasten the rod and have it trapeze down from the upper strut saddle nut. So we need to make sure we spin on one of our nuts already. That's going to go up and apply pressure to the actual saddle nut. And this one is going to apply a pressure on the bottom strut. So you want to get them on your rods already. We want to come and feed through our washer, our lock washer, okay, our small M10 washer, and our M12 washer. And then we're going to come down through that piece of strut, through the sandwich effect. And just before we get through the sandwich effect, if we can take a closer look in here, is we need to apply another 3/8 nut so that we can come and do the sandwich effect and apply the pressure to the ceiling plate. So let's get it on there. And now we're ready to go through our ceiling. That nut that's on there, you have to keep tightening and loosening it until the point where your rod is able to fit into your upper saddle nut. Once the saddle nut's installed inside the channel of the strut, we're ready to feed the threaded rod up into the saddle nut. At this point, we want to validate we got enough threads of the threaded rod going up into the saddle nut. So we need to make sure and go into the channel with our finger and make sure there's threaded rods surpassing the saddle nut inside. And now we can come and tighten up the 3/8 nut against the large square washer built into the saddle nut. 9/16 wrench. This point's crucial. We need to make sure we are tightening that nut to the max, preventing the actual threaded rod from back turning on you. Okay, with our saddle nut tightened up above, we're ready now for the next step in actually spinning down the 3/8 nut down against the lock washer. And you'll tighten it up with your 9/16 wrench. And you want to again make sure that you collapse the lock washer until it's flattened. And that's a properly applied lock washer. It's not necessary to over tighten. We just want to make sure we come and we collapse that lock washer. And that's fine. Now we're ready to move on to the next step, and that's tightening down our sandwich effect down against the drywall ceiling. And tighten that one up too with our 9/16 wrench. For now, we need to finish up screwing to the sides of the 2x4. And they need to be 1.5 inches in length. And the opposite side that we're going to screw into, and they are already offset from each other, so we need to make sure we're also penetrating 1.5 inches into the wood. So both sides need to be fastened. We're using 5 screws, properly fastened. They're going to come in your bill of material when you order the kit, okay? So again, this is good for up to 600 pounds. This is a properly supported 2x4 installation method. Once we got them all on there, we would want to take down and tighten down that bolt with our 17 millimeter, okay? Tighten down inside the channel of the strut. Make sure that everything is snug and the lock washers are tightened up nicely. Okay, in this segment, we're going to go over the TJI joists, the engineered truss. These trusses, they're either a 2x3 or a 2x4 lying flat. Being flat, we can't lag up into the underside of them. It's very dangerous. What might happen is we might tear off the actual bottom cord of that engineered truss. So what we have to do is actually make it as if we're going to grab the upper truss and pull down and put all of our weight to the upper end of the truss. Because these are what we refer to as floor joists. They're excellent for walking on, but not too good in hanging from tension off of. So what we've come up with is one of our original methods was the U-bracket. The U-bracket is going to wrap around, you see here, has wrapped around from the underside of the truss. How do you get it there for insulation? Well, you're not going to be up in the attic, so you're going to have to actually cut out your drywall from below. So you're dealing with major phase work here in minor construction. So you're going to have to cut out channels in your drywall, remove all your drywall, and then afterwards come back and patch from underneath. So again, in reviewing this U-bracket, okay, you're going to be able to cut the U-bracket down to the height of the truss that you have. Maybe you have a 10-incher, maybe you have 12 inches, maybe you have 14 inches, okay? You're going to be able to compensate either way, and you're going to be able to cut and trim it down to the size you required. So on this one, we actually had to cut off, okay, the first two sections and remove it. So our first step is we're going to have to get some plywood and fasten to the sides of each 2x3 engineered truss, and screw down every 2 to 3 inches. We want to put a bead of glue also before, and then we're going to come from below and fasten with some lag bolts to the side of the upper 2x3 in this case. So we're going to wrap around the truss. It's possible that our drop might be directly below. It might be directly below this truss, so we can come right off of it. Or in many cases, we're having to deal with where we're offset of an actual truss and we have to trapeze from one truss to the other truss. So what we have here on this side is actually a different type and model. And this is like those 2x4 webs. Okay, so the 2x4 webs, engineered TGI trusses. And then we got the 2x3, okay, with like a chip board or an esplanade board, and they're stuck together. Okay, so those are the two types of models of TGI trusses that you're going to view and see out there in the field. We went back to engineering. We said that's a lot of work having to possibly open up 2 trusses wide when we're below in the ceiling to open up all that drywall. So when speaking with them, they understood our request, and we're trying to open up less drywall now, okay, which is going to be less of expense to your end client. And we're just going to fasten now to the insides of the trusses. So we've come up with this bracket here. It's got like an H-type bracket built into it, okay. It's a bolt-through system, okay, large bolts, nylon lock nuts on them, okay, so everything's fastened in. It too comes, the piece of plywood's going to come, everything's going to come in the kit for the engineered TGI trusses, and you are going to be able to trim it to the height of your truss. So if your truss is, again, 9 inches, 12, 14 inches, not a problem. You're going to be able to actually trim it with your circular saw, trim it down to size, and then we're going to fasten it to the actual insides of our trusses. And then once we do that, we're going to trapeze. We're going to actually trapeze a piece of strut from one of the fastening plywoods to the other one. That's going to allow us, okay, to again come in and fasten to each side, apply the pressure to the upper timbers, and actually put our pressure to the full truss system other than just lagging into the bottom of it. So be sure to check out into the dealer section the proper installation method for either TGI truss system, whether it's the U bracket or whether we're going with the H bracket for the TGI truss system.